my friends are simps.
A standard feature in the background of a lot of my videos is my beloved MPC 2500, which you can see here with its glorious orange pads and green screen. Now, a few months ago, I did a video talking about how I was having a bit of trouble with it because when I was trying to record in, I wasn't getting sound out of one of the channels, and when I opened it up, I realised that the PCB was actually cracked, as opposed to just the knob or the potentiometer being off, which is what I thought it was originally. Now, I managed to fix this by jumping the connection with a wire, thanks to people in the comments below. However, I didn't feel like this was really a long-term solution given how crappy I am at fixing things, so I decided to buy a replacement logic board from MPCStuff.com. I was going to do this a while ago, but it's coming from America, and so I wanted to wait because of, you know, all of the implications of that. And I decided at the same time that I was going to upgrade the LCD screen because MPC Stuff have got an extra large LCD screen, and as lovely as this green thing here is, I wanted to see if I could trick it out. So today, I've got both bits. They're here somewhere. Here, I've got the box from MPC Stuff. I've got the replacement logic board, and I've also got the screen. So, I'm going to be replacing the board and also installing the screen, and we'll see how that goes. This shouldn't take that long, but famous last words. So to install the LCD and replace the PCB, you obviously need to take the MPC apart, right? Which is quite a lot of acronyms. Anyway, this can be daunting if you've never done it before, but it's actually really pretty straightforward. Everything inside is modular, kind of like an old desktop computer would be if you've ever taken one of them apart, you know, to put in memory or something. Now you have to remove a whole pile of screws to take off the bottom, the front, the sides, and then ultimately the top. You disconnect the LCD via a ribbon cable on the bottom, and then unscrew it from the chassis, all of which is very easy to do. Because I'm replacing the right hand PCB as well, I obviously want to get that out of the way first to make things easier. There's a few Molex style connectors in there, I think that they're called, that you have to disconnect. I used a wee mini screwdriver to prise them out, and then another bunch of screws that hold the PCB onto the chassis itself. Once they are removed, the whole PCB just lifts out easily. Now there's a couple of brass grommets on the side of the LCD casing, which the screws go into to hold it in place. You need to transfer these onto the new LCD chassis, and this was the hardest bit of the whole thing. The space is pretty tight and you need to be careful with it for obvious reasons. Well, more careful than I was anyway, since I accidentally pinged one of them across the room in the process when I was trying to hit it with the side of the screwdriver. A bit of a fuck up, but I got it in there in the end by pressing down with some pliers. Other than that though, the LCD just slots in place. You get it into the gears of the tilt mechanism, then screw it in place, and that's it. The cable feeds through the back and you plug it in just as it was before with the ribbon cable on the rear. For the right hand PCB, you first have to transfer the plastic buttons from the old one. They're really easy to get off, there's just wee clips on the rear that you pop out, but here I made a fairly big rookie error by starting to take them all off the old PCB first, before realising of course that I wouldn't know what button had to go where. A much smarter approach would be to do a section at a time so you can keep track of things and you know which buttons are meant to be in which place. It doesn't really matter a huge amount, I guess, but you know, you want the transparent buttons to be on the places where the LEDs are so they can shine through. If you wanted to replace all the buttons, then this would be a good time to do so. I didn't bother because, fuck it, I didn't want to spend any more money. Anyway, I did also transfer the plastic spacers as well. I wasn't sure whether or not I had to do that, but I did it anyway just in case, and this required a wee bit of finesse to do properly. Something which I did not have, and I kind of just ripped them out, or at least the first few, which again, don't follow my example. One thing to note is that the encoder on the new PCB is different from the original 2500 encoder. That is because for some reason people don't really like the 2500 version. I think because it's pretty clicky and slow compared to other MPCs. This never really bothered me, but the new PCB comes with the 2000 XL style encoder, and then you need to decide on what kind of jog wheel you're going to use with it. There's a few different options available. MPCStuff recommend the 2000 XL style jog wheel, and so that's what I went with. It's pretty nice, although the replacement is a bit smaller than the 2500 one, and also 3D printed as opposed to the original plastic, so if I can find a proper one at some point, I'll definitely be grabbing that, but for now, it seems to work, fine. Interestingly enough, both the record knob and the master volume knob sit higher on the replacement PCB than they did on the original. I believe that's because MPCStuff couldn't get the original encoders or potentiometers or something, and they had to, go with the replacement, which, was a bit taller. Weirdly, the record knob sits higher than the master volume knob, but whatever, as long as it works, then I don't care. With everything in place, it was then just a matter of putting it all back together. However, out of bitter experience, I decided to test things first, so I didn't have to then reopen everything when I discovered a problem. I did hit a bit of a snag at this point, because in order to use the new LCD and have it function correctly, you have to install a particular firmware version. A year or so ago, I bought the paid version of JJOSXL in anticipation, and I assumed it would be fairly straightforward just to switch over. However, it turns out that you can only install the specific version of JJOSXL that you need if you first install a specific version that comes along with the LCD. Unfortunately, MPCStuff hadn't sent me the download link over, so I had to email them and ask, which meant then waiting for them to reply, and it was a Sunday, and they're in America, so they're, hours and hours behind, and that meant they were going to take a few days to respond, or at least a day, meaning that I couldn't use or test the damn thing today like I wanted to, so another obstacle, which I could have done without. But anyway, I put it all back together, and I'll just test it out when the software arrives. Alright, so it's been about a week now, and as you can probably tell, I got everything working in the end. Things were a wee bit more complicated than I expected, because once I installed the software, I then had to pay for an upgrade to JJOSXL so that I could use the screen, and that meant waiting to get a license key from Japan over email, which added in a wee bit of an additional delay. Foolishly, I started playing about with MPC whilst JJOSXL was in demo mode, came up with something that I actually quite liked, and then realised that I couldn't save it until I got the password, so I had to leave the damn thing on overnight, which I don't really like doing, but hey, if I burned down the entire building, then I guess that would just be the price of art after all. Either way, despite a bit of faffing about, I'm really glad that I took the time and spent the money to do this upgrade. Even in the short time that I've been using it, the new screen makes such a difference. Not only can I see much more at one time, obviously, but it's also far crisper, and the old one, which I didn't actually have much of a problem with, now looks kind of tiny and sad in comparison. When it comes to the jog wheel replacement, I know that I was a bit skeptical at first, but I have to admit that the smoother 2000 XL style wheel really is far quicker and nicer to use in practice. It makes the whole system feel faster, weirdly enough, because you can zip through menu items more naturally. As it so happens, the version of JJOSXL that I've installed was also just updated a few months ago, and it is so good. Chopping and sequencing in this is genuinely a pleasure, and I've found myself really quickly getting into the zone with it, which is kind of what you want ultimately with music gear, right? I always liked the MPC 2500, but this has taken things to another level entirely, and I'm really pleased about it. Funnily enough, I did almost have something of a meltdown when I started recording, because up until then I had been using the headphone output only, and when I plugged in the stereo outputs into my interface, I could hear a crackling sound. And I became convinced that I was going to have to pay almost 500 quid to replace the entire mainboard of the unit, so that I could replace the output jacks because they are attached to the mainboard.
And then I thought I would have to buy JGOS all over again because it's tied to the board or whatever. As it turns out, well, it was the cables that I was using that were the problem, so that's good. I might be a fucking idiot, but it's good that I don't have to spend 500 quid. Every so often I get something of a notion to buy an MPC 2000 XL for no other reason than it's a classic machine. The MPC 2500 is clearly much better in basically every way, but I still haven't been able to quite shake that itch. Hopefully with these upgrades, that inclination will be put to bed indefinitely, though I guess we'll see. If you've got an MPC 2500 and you've been swithering over whether or not to install an extra large screen, then I would definitely recommend it. This is not a sponsored video, I bought this myself and I do think it makes a difference in practice. And plus, if I can install this fucking thing, then anybody can. Until next time, goodbye.